Imani Carter remembered the morning her world collapsed with a clarity that still unsettled her. She once believed a heart could only break from betrayal or violence, never from a handful of spoken words. But she learned otherwise the day Darius Holt walked out, leaving her and their newborn twins behind. She had believed love could conquer anything, that as long as they held on to each other, nothing could tear them apart. She whispered those beliefs to herself like promises, unaware they would shatter. "Darius, don't go," she had pleaded, but even then she sensed the truth. Love was not always enough. Not against ambition. Not against greed. Not against Evelyn Holt, his powerful, manipulative mother, who never thought Imani belonged in their world. Imani had met Darius on a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where golden leaves spun through the New York streets like falling confetti. She was a young interior designer recently moved to the city, walking home with a sketchbook tucked under her arm. Darius bumped into her outside a small cafe, nearly knocking her drawings loose. "I'm so sorry," he had said, flashing a warm smile that softened everything around him. At that moment, he wasn't the heir to the Holt real estate empire stretching from Manhattan to Los Angeles. He was just a charming man with warm brown eyes and dimples that appeared whenever he laughed. When he asked, "Can I buy you coffee to make up for almost ruining your art?" she said yes easily. They fell in love quickly, the way people do when hope and youth blur reality into something brighter. Darius wasn't like other wealthy men she'd met in the city. He wasn't arrogant or distant. He didn't flaunt his family's money. Instead, he listened, truly listened, to her dreams, her fears, her vision for a future she could barely afford. He held her hand during late-night walks, kissed her forehead when she doubted herself, and told her, "Imani, you're going to build something incredible one day." She believed him. She believed in them. In those early months, their love felt like a quiet universe they built together. What she didn't know was that the Holt name carried expectations, pressure, and a legacy strong enough to crush whatever it touched. When Imani discovered she was pregnant, joy bloomed inside her like a sunrise. Darius hugged her tightly, lifting her feet off the ground as he repeated, "We're going to be parents." He promised to protect her and their baby always. But promises meant nothing to Evelyn Holt. Imani first met her a week later at a lavish event in the Holt estate. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and every wall displayed expensive art. The moment Imani stepped inside, she felt eyes assessing her value. Evelyn sat in the center of the room, elegant in a silver gown, swirling a glass of wine. Her gaze swept over Imani, slow, sharp, judgmental. "Darius tells me you're pregnant," Evelyn said without warmth. "Unexpected." Imani's stomach tightened. The war had begun silently. Throughout the evening, Evelyn said little, yet her silence cut deeper than insults. Imani felt the other guests whispering, their eyes lingering too long. She didn't fit this world of polished perfection and old money, and Evelyn made sure she felt it. When they left, Imani whispered, "She hates me." Darius squeezed her hand. "She doesn't. She just needs time." But he didn't sound convinced. Over the next few days, Darius grew distant. He took late-night phone calls, avoided eye contact, and claimed he was handling family matters. When Imani asked if something was wrong, he always replied, "Everything's fine." Except everything wasn't fine. The man who once held her so tightly had become unreachable, and the feeling of unease grew heavier each day. By the time Imani gave birth to the twins, she knew something inside Darius had shifted beyond repair. He held Nova and Nelson gently in his arms, smiling softly, yet there was a wall between them. She felt it. She feared it. One morning, when the babies were barely 2 weeks old, he walked into their small apartment with shoulders hunched and eyes hollow. "Darius, what's wrong?" she asked, cradling Nelson. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the floor. "Imani, we need to talk." Her heartbeat quickened. She placed the baby in the crib. "You're scaring me." He inhaled shakily. "I can't do this anymore." She froze. "Do what?" His voice cracked. "I have to leave." In that instant, her world shattered. Imani staggered backward, gripping the edge of the crib. "Leave?" "Darius, what are you talking about?" He still wouldn't look at her. "My mother was right," he whispered. "We come from different worlds. This, us, it won't work." She felt heat rush to her face. disbelief turning into desperation. "You're leaving me, and your children, because Evelyn said so?" Darius swallowed hard. "It's more complicated than that." Her voice trembled. "No. It's exactly that." For a moment, she waited for him to take it back, to reach for her, to fight for their family. He did none of that. Instead, he walked toward the door. "I'm sorry, Imani." She stepped forward. "Darius, please, look at me." But he didn't. He left, closing the door on everything. The silence after he walked out was suffocating. Imani sank to the floor, her trembling hands covering her face as tears streamed uncontrollably. Nova and Nelson slept peacefully in their crib, unaware that their father had just abandoned them. Imani forced herself to look at them, two perfect, fragile lives depending solely on her now. "I won't fail you," she whispered through sobs, though she had no idea how she would manage. The next few days blurred into exhaustion and grief. Friends called, but she ignored them. She barely ate. She barely slept. At night, she cried silently, careful not to wake the twins. She had never felt so alone. Yet even in her despair, a small voice inside her whispered that she had to survive. One stormy night, as rain tapped the window, the truth settled inside her. She no longer had the luxury of falling apart. Nova and Nelson needed her. No one else was coming. She wiped her tears, stood up straighter, and promised herself she would fight. The next morning, she began searching for work. Before pregnancy, she had been a junior designer at a Manhattan firm, but her position was gone. "We've moved on," her former supervisor said politely. Others rejected her because she was a new mother. "We need someone fully flexible," one recruiter said. "You're not the right fit." Each rejection hurt, yet she kept going. At night, she worked on applications while rocking a crying baby, learning resilience the hardest possible way. Desperation pushed her to live frugally, stretching every dollar. Childcare was impossible to afford, so she balanced motherhood and job hunting with no support system. She learned to change diapers with one hand while typing emails with the other. She focused on remote work and eventually found a small freelance design job. The pay was modest, but it kept them afloat. Nights were spent working under the dim laptop glow while the twins slept beside her. Slowly, the grief inside her dulled. Not gone, but no longer consuming. She told herself, "I'm still here. I can do this." She didn't yet know how far she'd go, but she felt something shift within her, the beginning of a strength she never realized she possessed. One afternoon, while folding tiny clothes for the twins, Imani noticed something. Most baby outfits were either expensive or poorly made. She touched the soft fabric in her hands and whispered, "I could make better than this." The idea felt distant at first, almost foolish. But then she remembered long afternoons with her mother, who had taught her to sew dresses for dolls. That memory felt like a spark. She borrowed an old sewing machine from her neighbor, Miss Loretta, who smiled and said, "Baby, sometimes God gives us the tools before we know why we need them." Imani laughed softly. She didn't know anything about running a business, but she knew how to create. And so, late that night, she began. Imani's first pieces were simple: soft onesies, tiny leggings, and adorable dresses for baby girls. She made them for Nova and Nelson, and posted pictures online. A friend commented, "Where did you buy these? They're beautiful." Another messaged her privately asking for prices. Imani blinked at the screen, surprised. "People really want this," she murmured. Encouraged, she invested her last savings into fabric. She created more pieces, improving her stitches and experimenting with colors. Then she built a small online store. But sales didn't come. Days passed with no orders. She emailed mom bloggers and influencers, but received no replies. Once, she celebrated a small order, only for the customer to cancel. She closed her laptop that night, whispering, "Maybe this isn't meant for me." Later that night, as she watched the twins sleeping peacefully in the clothes she'd made, determination resurfaced. "No," she whispered. "I can't stop now." She changed her strategy. She retook product photos using natural sunlight, styled each outfit beautifully, and wrote heartfelt descriptions about being a single mother building from nothing. She joined parenting forums, shared her experience, and cautiously introduced her designs. Slowly, orders started trickling in. Her first real customer, a new mother in Chicago, ordered a tiny pink dress. When Imani saw the payment confirmation, she covered her mouth and cried. Thank you, she whispered. It wasn't about the money, it was validation. More orders followed. Small, manageable, but steady enough that she finally believed something new was beginning. She named her brand Little Blessings, because Nova and Nelson had given her the courage to start again. Her apartment transformed into a mini sewing studio. Fabric rolls stood against the walls, spools of thread cluttered every corner, and her sewing machine hummed late into the night. "Mama's working," she would whisper whenever the twins stirred. She answered customer emails at dawn, sewed during their naps, and packed orders when they slept. Every sale reminded her she wasn't powerless. She was building something, slowly, painfully, but steadily. Exhaustion followed her daily, yet she felt more alive than she had in years. One day, this will be big, she told herself. She didn't know how. She just believed. And that belief kept her moving forward. Then, one unexpected morning, everything changed. A well-known mom influencer posted a video holding one of Little Blessing's outfits, saying, "This is the softest baby clothing I've ever tried." Imani didn't even know the influencer had ordered from her. Within minutes, notifications flooded her phone. Messages, orders, comments, congratulations. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hands shaking. "I can't keep up with this." She called her friend Keisha for help packing, laughing and crying at the same time. "Girl, you're blowing up," Keisha shouted over the phone. 2 days later, Imani had to partner with a small workshop to handle production. Her brand was no longer just a side project. It was growing fast. Faster than she ever imagined. Success felt real for the first time. Within 6 months, Little Blessings became a recognized name among mothers across the country. Parenting blogs praised the softness, fit, and beautiful designs. Orders doubled, then tripled. Imani expanded her website, added new collections, and built a loyal customer base. She even started receiving interview requests from small business magazines. One evening, while adjusting a tiny romper on a mannequin, she whispered, "Mama did it, babies." Nova giggled from her crib while Nelson clapped his hands. For the first time since Darius left, Imani's heart felt full, not because she forgot the pain, but because she had transformed it. She stood taller now, walked with confidence, and knew she was no longer surviving. She was thriving. And she had done it all on her own. One evening, as she reviewed designs for a new collection, her phone buzzed. It was an email from a major mother and baby retail chain in New York. Her eyes widened as she read the message. "We would love to discuss carrying Little Blessings in our stores." Imani pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed. "This can't be real," she whispered. She read it again. And again. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but gratitude. She looked at Nova and Nelson sleeping peacefully and whispered, "You two saved me." She knew this opportunity could change everything. She replied professionally, scheduled a meeting, then sat quietly, letting the moment settle in. She had built a life she once thought impossible, a life she created with her own hands. As Little Blessings grew, Imani changed too. She was no longer the woman who cried behind closed doors or doubted her worth. She had become a successful entrepreneur, a mother who refused to crumble, a woman with vision and strength. She moved into a larger, sunnier apartment where the twins had space to crawl, play, and laugh. Every morning, she brewed coffee, opened her laptop, and managed orders while watching her babies explore. She had money saved, a thriving business, and a future she fully controlled. "Look at us now," she whispered proudly. She didn't think of Darius as often anymore. The anger had faded, replaced by quiet understanding. He was part of her story, but not her destiny. She had outgrown the pain he caused. One afternoon, while finalizing a contract, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Darius, Imani, can we talk?" She stared at the screen, a strange calm settling over her. Years ago, such a message would have shattered her. Now, it barely stirred her. She set the phone aside and continued working. Later, as she sat in her small office, she allowed her mind to drift to the past, not with sadness but clarity. She remembered the morning he left, the grief that nearly drowned her, and the strength she eventually found. "I'm not that woman anymore," she whispered. She didn't reply. She didn't owe him anything, not her time, not her emotions, not access to the life she rebuilt from ruins. Days passed, and Imani became busier than ever. She had magazine interviews, business meetings, and a growing list of orders. Life felt like a steady climb upward. Then, one Sunday morning at the park, she noticed a familiar figure standing a few feet away, Darius. He looked different. Older, tired, and undeniably regretful. He approached slowly, as if fearing she'd disappear. "Imani," he said softly. She didn't stand. She didn't smile. She simply looked at him, waiting. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me," he added nervously. She folded her hands. "Then why are you here?" His eyes flicked to the twins playing nearby, then back to her. "Because I realized I was wrong," he whispered. "About everything." She said nothing, letting silence speak. Darius shifted uneasily beneath Imani's calm stare. "I saw you on TV," he said, voice trembling. "Your interview, your success, it made me realize how much I ruined." Imani kept her expression neutral. "You realized that a little too late." Her tone held no anger, only truth. Darius nodded, swallowing hard. "I know. I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. Not because I expect forgiveness or another chance. I just regret everything." Imani slowly rose from the bench and looked him directly in the eyes. "Darius, I've come far to be where I am. And none of it has anything to do with you anymore." His breath caught. She continued, "I moved on. And I'm not letting my past disrupt my future." She walked away toward the twins, feeling lighter with each step. Darius remained frozen, as though her words pinned him to the ground. When she reached Nova and Nelson, they ran into her arms, laughing. She lifted them effortlessly, feeling strength she never recognized before. Behind her, Darius finally whispered, "Imani," hoping she'd turn. She didn't. For the first time, he understood what loss truly meant. Imani buckled the children into their stroller and pushed forward without looking back. In her heart, she knew something important had just shifted, not in him, but in herself. Darius had once held power over her emotions. Now he was simply a memory that no longer dictated her steps. She walked out of the park with steady, confident grace. Meanwhile, Darius returned to the vast Holt estate, a mansion that once represented everything he believed he needed. But tonight, it felt hollow. Golden lights glowed against marble walls, yet nothing warmed him. Evelyn Holt sat in her armchair, swirling wine in her glass, her expression unreadable. "Where have you been?" she asked sharply. Darius didn't answer immediately. He removed his coat and poured himself whiskey. "I went to see Imani." Evelyn's lips curled slightly. "I suppose you realized she's moved on without you." Darius clenched his jaw. "You say that like it's a surprise." Evelyn lifted a brow. "Did you expect a woman you abandoned to wait for you forever?" He slammed his glass onto the counter. "You helped push me away from her." Evelyn leaned back, unfazed. "I guided you toward the life you were born for, a Holt heir, destined for power, not domestic mediocrity." Darius shook his head, bitterness rising. "Power? You think that's what I have?" He gestured around the mansion. "I have money, a job, influence, but none of it fills the emptiness inside me." Evelyn scoffed, but he continued. "People respect me because of this name, not because of who I am. I'm surrounded by luxury, yet I've never felt more alone." For the first time, Evelyn's face twitched, unsure. "So what now? Are you expecting me to apologize?" Darius laughed bitterly. "You don't apologize. You never have. But I regret it all, listening to you, abandoning them, losing everything that mattered." Darius drew a shaky breath, staring around the mansion that had once felt like security. Now it looked like a cage. "I'm leaving," he said. Evelyn jolted upright. "What did you say?" He met her gaze steadily. "I'm leaving this house, this world, everything tied to you." Her voice sharpened. "If you walk out that door, you lose your inheritance. Everything I built for you." He gave a sad, weary smile. "I lost the most important things long before today." Evelyn's eyes widened, but she remained silent, unsure how to stop him. Darius grabbed his coat and walked toward the exit. This time, no one stopped him. The heavy mansion doors closed behind him with a thud that felt like both ending and beginning. Darius stepped into the cold night, breathing deeply for the first time in years. Without the weight of his mother's expectations pressing on him, the air felt different, almost freeing. He didn't know where he would go or what he would become, but he understood something clearly. He could no longer live a life scripted by someone else. As he walked down the steps of the estate, he whispered, "Imani, I'm sorry." Not expecting her to hear, but needing to say it. He had shattered something beautiful and couldn't rebuild it. He finally accepted that consequences don't disappear just because regret arrives. That night, he walked away from wealth, privilege, and legacy. For the first time, he chose a path with no guarantees, only truth. The following months were transformative for Imani. Little blessings continued to grow, and her name appeared in articles celebrating women entrepreneurs. She opened 2 flagship stores, one in New York, the other in Los Angeles. Mothers traveled from different cities just to buy her designs. "You're an inspiration," customers would tell her. She always smiled humbly, responding, "I'm just doing my best." At home, the twins filled her days with laughter, chaos, and warmth. The anxiety that once filled her nights was gone. She budgeted without fear. She planned without panic. She lived without dread. Each day she walked further from the pain of her past. When she looked in the mirror, she no longer saw heartbreak. She saw resilience, ambition, and a woman reborn. One warm afternoon, Imani took the twins to the park again. The sunlight danced through the trees, and Nova giggled as Nelson chased butterflies. A woman approached the bench, beaming. "Excuse me, aren't you Imani Carter? Founder of Little Blessings?" Imani laughed softly. "Yes, that's me." The woman clasped her hands excitedly. "I just want to say thank you. Your story helped me leave a toxic relationship. You reminded me I could rebuild." Imani felt emotion rise in her chest. "I'm honored," she replied. "Truly." The woman smiled warmly and left. Imani watched her go, realizing something profound. She hadn't just built a business, she had built hope for others. She whispered, "Mama's making a difference," and her heart swelled in quiet, graceful pride. That evening, as she prepared dinner, Nelson tugged at her apron. "Mommy's story?" he asked. She smiled. "After we eat, baby." Nova toddled toward her, clutching a stuffed bunny. Imani paused, soaking in the peacefulness of their home. Later, she tucked them into bed and sat beside them. "Tonight's story," she said softly, "is about a woman who thought her life was over, but it was just beginning." Nova blinked sleepily. "Did she get happy?" Imani kissed her forehead. "Yes, sweetheart. She created her own happiness." As she turned off the lights and stepped into the hallway, she felt it, contentment. Not the fragile kind she once begged for, but the durable kind she built herself. She finally understood that healing could be beautiful. Late that night, Imani stood by the window, watching the city lights flicker like scattered stars. She thought about everything she had overcome: betrayal, poverty, fear, sleepless nights, loneliness. And yet here she stood, whole, empowered, free. Her phone buzzed briefly, but she didn't check it. Whatever or whoever it was could wait. Her life no longer revolved around past wounds. She whispered to herself, "I survived. And I rose." Nova cried softly from the bedroom, and Imani hurried in, soothing her gently. As she rocked her daughter, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She didn't need a man to complete her. She didn't need validation from a broken past. She had rewritten her destiny. And she knew this was only the beginning of her peace. Months later, Imani stood inside her newest store, arranging a display of pastel baby rompers. The shop smelled of fresh cotton and lavender, a scent she chose to make mothers feel embraced. Her assistant, Talia, hurried over with a smile. "We just sold out of the new spring line again." Imani laughed softly. "Already? That's incredible." She walked through the store, admiring the customers browsing. Each mother who touched her products reminded her of how far she had come. "This is real," she whispered. Talia approached again. A reporter wants to feature you in a national magazine. They said your journey is powerful. Imani paused, heart swelling. Once, she doubted she'd ever stand tall again. Now she was becoming a symbol of resilience. That evening, after locking up the store, Imani pushed the twin stroller down a quiet street lined with blooming cherry trees. Nelson pointed excitedly. "Mommy! Pink trees!" Nova clapped in agreement. Imani laughed, her heart warm. "Yes, baby. They're beautiful." She stopped at a little bench and sat with them, watching petals drift like soft snow. An older woman passing by recognized her. "Aren't you that designer? The one who built a business after heartbreak?" Imani nodded humbly. "Yes, ma'am." The woman smiled gently. "You're proof that storms don't end us, they shape us." Imani thanked her, touched by the words. As the woman walked away, Imani whispered to her children, "You two gave me strength I didn't know I had." And she meant it deeply. Later that night, as she prepared the twins for bed, Nelson suddenly asked, "Mommy, where's Daddy?" The question hit unexpectedly. Imani paused, kneeling beside him. "Daddy lives somewhere else now," she said softly. "But Mommy loves you both very much." Nova looked confused. "Daddy gone?" Imani lifted them into her arms. "Yes, baby. But you're safe. And you're loved." Her voice remained steady, but inside, she felt a familiar ache, one she'd learned to control, not ignore. She rocked them gently until they drifted to sleep. Standing near the crib, she whispered, "You didn't lose anything, my loves. You gained a mother who will never leave." She closed the door quietly, knowing she was giving them a childhood filled with love, not abandonment. One weekend, the twins' daycare held a small family event. Parents gathered on the playground, chatting while children played. Imani walked in confidently, carrying cupcakes she'd baked that morning. A father approached her and smiled warmly. "You're Imani Carter, right? My wife loves your brand." She thanked him graciously. Others soon joined, praising little blessings and her story of rising after hardship. Imani felt pride, not from being admired, but from knowing she had earned every bit of respect. As Nova and Nelson joined a circle of kids, they ran back to her frequently, hugging her legs before returning to play. Watching them laugh, she realized she had built not only a business, but a stable home, a loving environment, and a future filled with possibility. Meanwhile, Darius lived quietly in a small apartment far from the Holt estate. He worked a modest job, paid his own bills, and cooked simple meals. There were no servants, no lavish events, no inherited luxury, only silence and reflection. Many nights, he stared at old photos of him and Imani, tracing the edges with regret. "I ruined everything," he'd whisper to himself. He often wondered about the twins, what they looked like, how they laughed, what milestones he'd missed. Sometimes, he rehearsed words he might say if he ever saw Imani again. But deep down, he knew the truth. He had forfeited his place in their lives. And no apology, no matter how sincere, could undo the choices he made years ago. One morning, while watching Imani's interview replay online, Darius felt his chest tighten. She looked radiant, confident, successful, fulfilled. The host asked, "What's the most important lesson you learned from your journey?" Imani smiled thoughtfully. "That I didn't need saving. I just needed to believe in myself." The clip ended, leaving Darius silent. He whispered, "She doesn't need me anymore." It wasn't bitterness he felt, just acceptance. He stepped outside into the crisp air, thinking about the life he could have had. But he also recognized Imani's strength wasn't born because he left, it was revealed because she had to rise. She had gone beyond him, beyond the Holt name, beyond the pain. And strangely, he felt proud of the woman she became. As months passed, Imani's influence grew. She was invited to speak at women's conferences, encouraging mothers, entrepreneurs, and survivors of emotional hardship. Standing on stages with bright lights, she'd share her story with honesty and grace. "Pain doesn't define you," she'd say. "What you choose after it does." Audiences applauded with tears in their eyes. After each event, women approached her, sharing their own stories of abandonment, healing, or rebuilding. Imani listened attentively, offering warmth and understanding. She realized that her journey wasn't just personal, it was communal. Her resilience gave others permission to rise. After one session, she stood backstage, feeling grateful. "I was broken once," she whispered, "but now I help others rebuild." And that purpose filled her heart completely. One quiet Sunday, Imani sat on her balcony, sipping tea while watching the twins paint with messy excitement. Nelson proudly held up his picture. "Look, Mommy. It's us." Nova added, "Happy family." Imani's heart swelled. "Yes, babies. A very happy family." The phone buzzed with another business opportunity, but she set it aside. Moments like these mattered more. She joined the twins on the floor, painting alongside them. Splashes of color covered the pages, her hands, and their clothes, but she didn't mind. She laughed freely, feeling lighter than she ever had. She had reached a stage of life where peace wasn't fleeting, it was consistent. Her home was filled with love, stability, and joy. The past no longer haunted her. It simply confirmed her strength. That night, as she tucked the twins into bed, Nova asked again, "Mommy, did the lady get happy?" Imani smiled softly. "Yes, sweetheart. She made her own happiness." Nelson blinked sleepily. "Like you, Mommy." She brushed his curls gently. "Yes, baby. Just like me." After they drifted off, she lingered by the doorway, watching their peaceful breaths. She whispered, "Thank you for choosing me." Closing the door softly, she walked into the living room, surrounded by the quiet of a home built entirely through love and perseverance. She remembered who she once was, broken, abandoned, terrified. Now she was whole, empowered, fulfilled. She no longer needed validation, approval, or apology. Her life was her own creation. And she had created something beautiful. In the end, Imani's story wasn't about revenge, regret, or what Darius lost. It was about what she gained: strength, independence, and a love for herself she never imagined possible. She became a mother who never wavered, a businesswoman who built success from ashes, and a woman who refused to be defined by abandonment. Standing by the window that night, she whispered, "I won." Not against Darius or Evelyn, but against the darkness that once tried to bury her. She picked up her journal and wrote, "Pain shaped me. Courage freed me. Love rebuilt me." As the city lights glowed outside and her twins slept peacefully in the next room, Imani knew one truth: her destiny belonged to her now, and she would never surrender it again. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel.